Welcome back, guys. This week we're talking about your unconscious, specifically where your two emotions come from, anger and anxiety. That's right, you only have two emotions. I've gotten a lot of pushback on this idea in graduate school. I've gotten a lot of vitriol about this idea, really. I think it's because when you tell people they only have two emotions, makes them feel not special, like they're not that unique. But you have way more than two feeling states. You have a seemingly infinite number of feeling states, but only two primary emotions. Like there's primary colors. There's only three colors ultimately, red, blue, and yellow. But you combine those colors, additive, subtractive, to create whatever hexadecimal rainbow, however many colors there are. And that's how anger and anxiety are. The way they combine create, again, a seemingly infinite array of feeling states. It all comes from your unconscious, your pleasure, pain mechanism. Your unconscious is that, whatever we have in common with the Komodo dragon psychologically. That's our unconscious. Part of that is your pleasure pain mechanism. Orthodox idea, nothing controversial. When you do something that's pleasurable, you want more of it. You're a 5-year-old kid and you're playing a game with your family and you win the game and it's this fun experience. Ooh, that's pleasure. I want more of that. You go to cross the street when you're 5 years old. You don't look both ways. Your mom yells at you. Oh, now there's pain associated with crossing the street. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Pleasure, pain, combined with the fact that we have two values, two kinds of values, a positive and negative value. Positive value is that which we act to gain and keep. Negative value is that which we act to avoid. So let's make a 4x4 diagram here. I learned early on in graduate school that if you want people to teach your ideas, you just create a 4x4 diagram out of everything. And then we have the emotion diagram down here, just for reference. So pleasure associated with the positive value, oop, that's good. Usually desire, anger, there's probably some excitement in here. Or at least keeping you from the negative value, making you go towards the positive value is maybe extra motivation. Pain associated with a negative value, also good. You want some sort of pain, some sort of anxiety. This is usually anxiety around getting hit by a car. You want to be aware. That's what anxiety does. It makes us more aware. Pain associated with a positive value, oop, that's bad. This is the guy who's afraid of women. It's a positive value, but you're afraid of it because you maybe have a lot of negative experiences around that value. In addition, this is usually anxiety, and so we fix this. In addition to confronting the anxiety and turning it into confidence, this is education. Fix that by education. Pleasure associated with a negative value. Oops, also bad. Usually a secondary emotional payoff, which we fix by being responsible. That's when you're down here, victimhood with anxiety, temper tantrums with anger. And what's the secondary emotional payoff? It's usually gaining attention from it. And we need to be responsible for that. We need to do whatever we need to make our emotions conscious. Attachments, awareness, journaling, meditation, in addition to being responsible. And that's how we can fix this. And what I'm ultimately saying is, look, here's you. Just tons of diagrams. This is a negative value. It's a positive value. Anger is typically the emotion that draws you towards a positive value. Anxiety keeps you away from a negative value. Only two emotions. I got this idea in part from this book. I think it was this guy's dissertation, Harry Binswanger. The biological basis of teleological concepts. Kind of a mouthful, but all he says is every biological function has a teleos. It is goal-directed. It wouldn't be a biological function if it wasn't. It wouldn't exist. It wouldn't make sense that it existed without some teleos. You know what else is a biological function? They're just chemicals in our brain. That's emotions. Maybe emotions are teleological, and if that's the case, there can only be two. That's it, guys. But how do we get the rich array of feeling states from these two emotions? Well, let's go through a few examples. There's happiness and joy. I would say happiness is equal parts confidence and compassion. You feel capable in getting what you want You feel like you deserve, you feel compassion for yourself in having what you have. That would be happiness. Joy would be a momentary kind of happiness, usually associated with something in childhood. Like I feel a lot of joy when I go to Coney Island every summer, eat oysters, ride the cyclone. That gives me a lot of joy because it's at least somewhat similar to what I did when I was a child a lot. Can only exist though under the umbrella of happiness. There is disgust and pity. These are somewhat similar. And disgust reminds me, so we all saw Inside Out a couple years ago, based on research that said there are only 5 emotions: disgust, fear, sadness, joy. What was the other one? Disgust, fear, sadness, joy, anger. Right. No, that's bad research. I've gone through that research, and I don't want to get into it now because it's not that interesting. These videos are boring enough as is, but the epistemology behind that research is all off. Those guys spend way too much time in lab coats, not enough time in tweed coats, at least sport coats. But we can explain all the emotions through anger and anxiety, so Occam's razor and so forth. And here I'm not talking about biological disgust. I'm talking about emotional disgust. Biological disgust is what happens when, you're on the subway and somebody pukes. Usually happens at Halloween, then other people start to puke. They get that smell of sick and they start to puke. That is biological disgust. This is emotional disgust, which I would call anger empathized. It is when we're essentially saying to somebody is, if I was in your shoes, if I was in your situation, I would get angry and change my situation. So if you're into fitness and you see a fat person, you may feel disgust toward them because you're essentially saying, if I was that big, I would just eat kale for the next 3 weeks. That's why disgust, it represents a cleave in values, which is why if disgust is felt in a relationship from one of the partners to the other one, a boyfriend-girlfriend sort of thing, the relationship's probably not going to last long because it represents a cleave in values. Pity is similar. Pity is sadness empathized. What we're saying when we feel pity towards somebody is, if I was in your situation, I wouldn't be able to change it. Which is why Nietzsche says that pity is a mask for self-contempt. We feel contemptible towards ourselves because we know if we were in that situation, we wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Also, let's go through nostalgia and hope. These are pretty interesting. Nostalgia is anger in the past. It's anger directed towards the past. We feel nostalgia for a time and a place that we know we can never get again. A need will never get met. Nostalgia, sadness towards the past. Hope, anxiety directed towards the future. That there's like this airy feeling of hope. I mean, if you really felt like you could get something, whatever you're hoping for, whatever that teleos value goal is, you wouldn't really hope for it. You would just do it. I mean, you don't hope that you can get a cup of coffee in the morning. You just do it. Which reminds me, another 4x4 chart really quick. Anger, anxiety up top. We have past and future. The future, Conan. Anger directed at the past. This is revenge. We talked about this. Anger into the future. This is jealousy. You're anticipating somebody getting your need before you can get it. That's all jealousy is. It's anger directed into the future. Anxiety in the past. This is regret. We talked about this in the anxiety video, or one of them. Anxiety in the future. This is worry, like hope. There's an element of worry in hope. That anxiety that causes worry also causes hope a little bit. They're different shades of the same thing, like the color wheel, like whatever hexadecimal, how many colors there are, emotions the same way. But it all comes from anger and anxiety. It all comes from driving towards a value and being restraining yourself from a value, and the decisions we make with those emotions. A great story that encapsulates what I'm talking about here is an old patient of mine. His name is Mason. He was a police officer, and there was a lot of corruption on the force. He was about to expose this corruption, but the guy is in on the corruption. The police officer's in on the corruption. They go to his house, and they shoot him. They shoot him before he can expose them. Mason, he doesn't die. He goes in a coma for 7 years. They think he dies, but they do shoot and kill his wife. I mean, it's just really sad. So Mason wakes up from this coma after 7 years and just, totally pissed off, totally driven by revenge. And I know we talked about revenge previously, how it can be a not so adaptive, a maladaptive emotional state. I think it can be adaptive when it's done in a divine justice, like righting a cosmic wrong sort of way, like Edmond Dante's in The Count of Monte Cristo. Nobody else was going to get back at those guys. Nobody else knew that what those guys did, the wrong that was brought against him. So he was seeking sort of rectifying the divine injustice. And that's what Mason does in his story. He's trying to heal himself. He's been in a coma for 7 years. He's infirm. He gets himself back to health. He does Chinese medicine. He gets into yoga and Eastern meditation and medicine and all that stuff. And this was back in 1989 when it was a lot cooler to do that. He sets up a plank in his yard, a wooden plank, and he gets in shape by just punching the plank. And he gets into such good shape that he punches the plank one time and it flies completely out of the ground. I mean, how cool is that? He does hill sprints in Ojai, California, which is a lot of fun, I'm sure. And even though he runs duck foot, he looks like a dork. Whatever. You're doing hill sprints in Ojai. What a great experience. The main bad guy, his name was Trent. I think Trent was the guy who shot him. You know what he says to Trent? He says, I'm going to take you to the bank. The blood bank. What a cool thing to say. A total array of experience, a color wheel of experience, a hexadecimal, however many colors there are of experience, all from revenge. And this is how we get the array of emotions from two primary ones. This may be a controversial idea, guys. You may not like this. This may make you feel like you're not that special. But again, like we always say, meditate on this. Put this in the base of your brain. You may need to put this a little bit lower into your spinal cord, your C2 or C3 vertebrae, something like that. Put it way down there. Meditate on this. And it's only when we understand, we can really only be special, we can really only cultivate a unique sort of existence to the extent to which we recognize that we're not that special.